Hello, everyone, and hey, Ed, great to
Hey,
be
good to see you.
chatting on stage with you once again. So yeah, let's dig into it. A lot has happened in the world of AI since we talked a year ago at Consensus.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that has struck me, I think the biggest thing that struck me, is we've hardly gone anywhere in this space. Like we are witnessing the birth of a child, something entirely new, fresh technology, and already we see the world wolves beginning to circle. The regulators are coming, the institutions are trying to throw up moats, and the people who already have a seat at the table are trying to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're full up." And that bothers me. That really bothers me. Uh, and I wonder for you, somebody who's been working in the space, who actually sees this from the ground, what do you see like changing here? What is it? I don't want to say who is the primary threat because I don't want you to make enemies. Uh, but what has changed from a year ago to now that just puts the hair on your back up?
Well, I think the AGI race is getting more and more serious year on year, like big companies and funds with a lot of money and government agencies are taking AGI more and more seriously, and they're clearly trying to capture it without even quite understanding what it is or what it's going to be. But I tend to be optimistic because while the attempts to capture, own, and control AGI, I mean, they're very naked and obvious and brazen. On the other hand, they're also very ham-handed and just stupid and silly in some ways, right? So it
Yeah.
seems to me that if what we see now is how things are going to unfold, yeah, there will be attempts to control AGI and lock it down, but they won't be clever enough to capture the actual thing, right? Which is probably the best we could hope for. I mean, you can't hope that the powerful forces aren't gonna try to lock it down, right? So, I mean, it
Yeah.
is.
But so yeah, what we have there that I think there's two directions they're going. There are sort of the home baked AI safety efforts, which is legislators coming up at a lower level or in the U.S. like a state level with regulatory approaches. You had mentioned previously there's one in California where they're trying to go like, oh, don't train anything that is any bigger or any faster than this, and it's just not going to work. It's bad law. It's not workable in any way. But the AI safety panic in general is something I have a problem with. And I see there are genuine, well meaning, true believers in the AI space who are worried, these things are going to go Terminator on us or Grey Goo or whatever. Um, but there's also people that are trying to inject their politics into powerful models to try
Yeah.
to normalize
I
like
mean, this
minority
is
views and impose them. Like Google has been really bad about this recently, and interestingly, they've suffered a little bit of a backlash for it because you realize they say safety, but what they're talking about is control over AI. And we're talking about like generative image models or whatever, and they're going, well, we've got like certain diversity values, so we want to have diverse views or whatever. You ask for a picture of a family, and we won't just put in like whatever the training set would reflect as the most common family, and so we tokenize that, sure. But they go, we want to actually change your prompt and put more diversity in there, and like you could see how that's well-meaning, but then you get like black, Native American, Asian Nazis,
yeah.
and it's like, don't interfere with the user. You don't know better than the user. Don't try to impose your will upon the user. And yet we see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, it is absurd and kind of evil the way that these paranoid zealots who really fear AGI is going to become the Terminator and kill everyone. These well-meaning zealots are being manipulated by greedy corporate people who want to use their paranoia as a reason to get everyone but them locked down from doing advanced AI, right? I mean, it's not surprising, but it's unpleasant to see, because I mean, I think folks like Nick Bostrom or Eliezer Yudkowsky, these guys have been around the futurist transhumanist world for a while. I mean, these guys really believe that the default state for an advanced AI is to kill all humans. And they just don't believe that, training and teaching an AI to help people and be kind to people is a strong enough thing to do. They're just afraid it will seem really nice and kind and do good things. Then the moment it gets twice as smart as people, it'll completely about-face and annihilate everyone. And I think they're wrong, but they really believe this. But then what's happening is all these corporate people are saying, look, AI is a big danger. These smart guys say so. So therefore, since AI is a big danger, you must ban everyone with a market cap less than 1 trillion from creating AI to keep things safe, because no one who's that rich can do any wrong, right? And I mean, clearly, it's very naked attempt at regulatory capture, but unsurprisingly, it's sort of working. I mean, you see like healthcare and finance are regulatory captured by big companies of different sorts in US and other countries. So it's not surprising that would work. What's funny, though, is the way the regulatory capture is being performed is very, very overfit to the precise kinds of AI being developed in big companies right now. So it's like we'll make a law saying, okay, AI models with more than X trillion parameters must be regulated. But like, what if your AI model uses a totally different kind of algorithm where its power isn't even counted in the number of floating point parameters, right? And then it's totally off to the side of all these laws that are being made. And that sort of highlights the point that really AGI is going to be a series of advances. The details are probably going to surprise everyone, even including me to some extent, right? And to pin down laws to hold it back is going to be very, very challenging, even if you have a huge amount of money behind you, because the process of formulating these regulations and putting them in place is, I think, going to be slower than the pace of innovation of the technology. So I don't think the attempt at regulatory capture will actually work in this case, because the thing you're trying to capture is like too fast moving and dodging all over, unlike the financial or
well, I think that's
case.
actually the strategy, and that's what we need. You raised a lot of interesting points there. I think there's a couple ways of looking at it. One, ideologues have always been sort of captured and subordinated to institution and state interests, where they have been instrumentalized to try to basically achieve what the state wants. And these guys happen to be advancing a narrative or whatever that they just find to be useful. And we see certainly corporations are going, oh, yeah, AI safety. If that stops small startups, we should have 2 spoonfuls of that. And the way beyond that, when you look at these laws and how they're being constructed and how they are sort of protecting the big players and being designed to burden the small players, that's not happening by accident.
No.
But as you mentioned, it's probably not going to work. What we see with the desire by the state to regulate that, I think, is they are using, let's just say money, the sort of investment, the capital available to these companies as a proxy for power. And that's what the state is really interested in. They're going, all right, regardless of what language you speak, regardless of what flag you live under, this is a new technology that's coming forth that is going to have a lot of impact, or it might have a lot of impact. But we see it's moving very, very quickly. Whoever gets here first is going to have an advantage for a certain number of years. And so we're basically doing what you're not supposed to do under like World Trade Organization sort of common international agreements we're not supposed to do, but suddenly everybody has started doing, which is the imposition of tariffs or tariff-like policy, where they go, we're going to form national champions. You saw a lot of criticism in the last decades about China doing this in spaces like 5G,
Yeah.
where previously it was like Siemens and Nokia and whatnot were the only game in town. And then you've got Huawei, who nobody had heard of a couple decades ago, and now they run all the networks in the world. Then they start going, oh, we've got national security concerns in the West, and so Huawei can't sell anything anywhere anymore. And it's just like a cat and mouse game. Well, on the other side of this, we have ordinary people who don't really care about flags. They shouldn't care about flags. They shouldn't have these national commitments. And they should be thinking more globally, scientifically, humanistically, and what's better for all of us, or just how can I use my phone? How can I do whatever? How can I go about my life in the best way? And all of these hurdles are being built around them. And we're being penned in. And I see this actually, it goes all the way down to the bottom of our culture. And it gets back into that fear. You said these Yudkowsky type guys who are just like, AI is going to kill us all. Why? Well, just because, of course, everyone wants to kill us all. It's natural
Yeah.
it's the nature of intelligence. And I'm like, well, hang on, brother, that's a little, I think that says a little bit more about you
Yeah.
than about anything else. And I wonder, are these people parents? Because I
No.
became recently a parent. I've got little guys, right? And one of the things that's interesting, it's challenging. I'm doing this talk right now with almost no sleep because my little son, he's at the phase where he's afraid of the dark. So I'm in my room trying to crash and get a couple hours of sleep before this, and just in the middle of the night, pitch black in the room, door swings open. It's not the CIA, thank God. Um, and I just hear this little voice pop me up and it says, Papa. And he climbs into bed and, he wakes me up, of course, every half hour for the rest of the night. But they are curious, right? Even if they're afraid, they try new things, they experiment relentlessly, they break things, they damage things, they don't know the harms that are the consequence of their experiments, but that's how they learn. We are building new intelligences that have to go through similar processes. They have to see what works. They have to see where they bump into the table. They have to see where the glass falls and breaks. Nobody likes it. It's not comfortable. But this is what children have always done. And we have become more sophisticated in some ways, like we're trying not to hit kids as much as we used to back in the day. But I do also see a lot more yelling. I see a lot more lack of community patience for other people's children. Like if a kid is loud in a restaurant or whatever, dirty looks, all these things. Children have to exist somewhere and they have to learn somewhere because people let you do that. That's how they got to where
this
you're
is
right now.
This is the reason I've often been interested in giving AIs sort of metaverse and video game worlds to play around in, actually, because having an AGI toddler use the world economy as its playground is probably not ideal. Whereas in a simulated world, like the Sophiaverse world we're building, for example, with simulated AI robots in it, then the AI can play around in there and then transfer that out to the actual physical world once it's learned a little bit. But I do think the child rearing metaphor has some legs to it where AGI is concerned. And I've had 5 kids and one granddaughter now, and you see, as you say, it's a learning process, it's an experimental process, and there's no guarantees of the outcome. On the other hand, most of the time, if you raise a kid and give them freedom to learn and explore, and you raise them with love and compassion, on the whole, they're probably not going to randomly reverse course at age 22 and want to slaughter you, right? It has happened. It has happened. It's happened before,
the key
but
value
it's not,
that they have to reach is like sharing. It's cooperation. You learn just as any agent will learn that we can achieve more together. And so we want pro-social behavior.
I think that's
And the
right.
way you do that is giving them the opportunity to see what happens if
So
they're antisocial, what happens if
what
they're
we need to
pro-social,
do,
not to change the prompt and say, do this or you can't do anything.
right? So what we need to do in order to beat big tech and big government in the race to create the first powerful AGI, I mean, we need to roll out proto AGI technology that's smarter than what big tech is doing, and roll it out on decentralized networks. And we have to roll it out wrapped in a model that gives it the opportunity to experiment in a curious way and to demonstrate and to guide itself toward pro-social behavior, right? So, I mean, you need all these ingredients. It has to be smarter than what big tech is doing so that people will actually want to use it because it's cool, because it's good. It needs to be decentralized in infrastructure so that it's a fucking pain for the powers that be to squash it and shut it down. And it has to be rolled out in a way that lets it explore and be pro-social and compassionate and learn. And if we can line all those things up, then we can get, with high probability, a beneficial AGI, right? And what's interesting is all that is quite possible, right? I mean, I think big tech companies, they're all chasing, training the biggest LLMs, and so if training bigger and bigger LLMs is the path to a human level AGI, then we're pretty much fucked because these big companies are they're going to do it. They're putting trillions of dollars into it. On the other hand, if some different approach can get faster to AGI, then there's a very strong opportunity because these big tech companies are all sort of chasing down the same things. And I mean, if you take the analog of the computer hardware industry, it's like everyone was banging on CPUs because it was working.
Yeah.
Then NVIDIA came and decided to bang on GPUs, right? And then they just took over a huge percent of that market. So again, now everyone's banging on big LLMs. If it's something else, it's going to be even better. Maybe using LLM as a component, right? Then there's the opportunity to roll out that even better thing on a decentralized infrastructure while no one's paying attention to that, and while all their stupid regulations are focused on the big LLMs, right?
Well, and this is one of the things
there's still quite interesting opportunities here.
Yeah, this is one of the things that gets me sort of frustrated when I look at the world. Like everybody's excited about these LLMs, and they are powerful. They're interesting.
They're cool.
They're novel, but they're also pretty limited. And you see, like the GPTs, whether we're talking about 3.5, whether we're talking about the more recent ones, it's like we've seen 3.5 plus a zillion more parameters, and then they're basically just stapling like little function calls into it, hiding it as a kind of focus pocus, and like, okay, this is going to go out and do an internet search for you, and this is going to go out and do whatever. And they're like, oh, it's a brilliant model that's much more intelligent. And I'm like, how much of that is actually improvement? And because it's not open, you can't tell. And I don't know. I kind of feel like we're starting to reach some limits there. And like you said, the way I think we get through these regulatory hurdles is AI development has to be greased pig, right? It's got to be the thing that's too mean, too small, too quick, and just too gross to catch. Like this has to be a moving target, and when they go after it, they end up hurting themselves and falling into the mud. Yeah, you catch one pig, but the other ones, all run off. You're not going to catch them all. What I worry about with this is not so much the LLM model, it's the types of AI that we haven't, or the types of models or the applications even of prior models that we haven't seen yet. Like looking from a surveillance perspective, back in 2013, the NSA was basically ingesting the entirety of the internet to the maximum extent of its capacity, its connections. They were running some crude filters to go, all right, your BitTorrent traffic is too big, too burdensome. Your YouTube content streams are too low value. We'll create the tag and save the tag the reference for which YouTube video you watched, so we can put that in your permanent record. But we don't need the whole copy of the video data for like 11 billion people or whatever, constantly
Right, but
filling our
now they
buffers.
can. Yeah.
Well, right, but
Yeah.
they don't need to, right? That you always want to compress the data and go, what's the valuable stuff there? What they ended up on was this idea that activity records, what we call metadata, were more valuable than the content of the communications themselves. They didn't want to see the video itself you watched. They wanted to see the title of it, right? They wanted to see when you went to see it, what device you saw it from. When you wrote an email to someone, they didn't want a human to like look at the email. They didn't have models that could like gist it well enough, but they wanted to see who you were writing to, what was the frequency, which of the people that you're talking to you trust the most by making inferences of contact frequency for contact intimacy. Who are you writing to in off hours, right, in the middle of the night? And all of these things, you could start to get inferences about human behaviors, even without ever understanding a single word that was inside the communications. When you start getting machine models to look at this at scale from directions that we haven't seen, like the movements of your car, because your car
Oh
has
yeah.
a cellular modem in it that's always connected. You turn your phone off, you go, oh, I don't want to be tracked here, but your car is still tracking you. When you get this into all the commercial networks, wherever you used your card, your payment networks and things like that. When you think about your browser, you go home, and whether it's on your phone, whether it's on your desktop, you've got like 4 billion tabs open. And when you switch from one tab to the other, there are tabs that you open more
Yeah,
frequently
I
than
mean,
others
there's no
because you check these every
question.
night.
While LLMs are not going to get you to AGI on their own as a tool for surveillance, I mean, these sorts of technologies can be very valuable. And the fact that they hallucinate random stuff all the time
Yeah.
may not matter too much to governments. The worst that's happened is they arrest a few innocent people. They do it anyway, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, these technologies have a lot of potential to be used for fascist oppression in that way. On the other hand, if you roll out an AGI that's smarter than LLMs on a decentralized network of machines in 150 countries in the world or whatever, coordinated by a blockchain protocol that's not controlled by any single party. I mean, all this LLM-powered espionage may still not do the trick, right? So we did a conference in Panama a few months ago on beneficial general intelligence. My favorite quote at the conference was given by my friend Alan Combs, the psychologist. He said, "Relax, nothing is under control," right? And I think that sort of summarizes the overall global situation. Like if you roll out AI on a decentralized network, I mean, in my view, for the better, and some people's view for the worse. Like, it's not that easy to control that thing, which places a burden
Well,
to make it pro-social and like a good child rather than a psychopathic child, right? But
yeah.
I think blockchain can be used to elude regulatory capture. At least that's the
But
hope, anyway.
I think you've actually brought us back to that metaphor about the child, and I think that's the right thing. You say nothing's under control, and that is a good thing. You
Yeah.
can't control children; they are chaos, and that's the value of them, and that's what's failing. I think with our culture and how we interact with children, we have this fear that they'll get in trouble, that we will get in trouble. Life is trouble. Life is change. If things are under control, you are doomed. You are in an inflexible system that's no longer progressing. We need heresy. We need people who depart from the consensus because the consensus at every point in human history has been wrong. When you look at ancient societies, that's not where you want to live. If you look at ancient medicine, that's not how you want to be treated. And yeah, a lot of these things are going to be changing, and a lot of these things are going to be problematic, and a lot of them are going to cause trouble. And yeah, we can smooth some of the rough edges off. But we need to have the courage to recognize that people that are throwing walls up are causing more harm than they are preventing.
Absolutely.
And when you talked about how we get this out there, the number one thing that for people in this room that I want them to leave this, talk remembering, the people who are actually working in this space, who are building things, what we have to avoid with this regulation, what they're trying to do is trying to appoint these champions, and you're on the team, or you go through the process to become on the team, or you're not allowed to play. We've seen this in the past. We have to avoid them seizing the means of instruction.
Yeah.
We need to be able to train models. And I think that's possible. I think it's available to us. And as long as the genie is out of the bottle, people know this is possible, they will achieve it, because ideas are irrepressible. Like you can't, like water, they can't be compressed. They will drill through concrete if they have to, whether it's in your roof, whether it's in the foundation, whether it's in the wall. Even a dam will collapse from the smallest leak with the most pressure. And our job is, they'll build a dam around us, but we have to make sure it doesn't stop our flow.
Well, my email signature for the last 6 months or so has been a quote from Nietzsche. One must have chaos in one's heart to give birth to a dancing star. So this is the beautiful metaphor for the role of chaotic, childlike experimentation in the birth of superintelligence. And I think, in spite of the attempts to lock it down, the forces of beneficial chaos are going to win. At least that's how it feels to me now.
Well, I certainly hope so. I've had a wonderful time here. Do you have any other questions? Should we go to the audience? Or should
I think we can go to the audience. Yeah, the little clock in front of me says 000, so I think we've used our allotted time.
I'm Gaurav Chopra. I'm a professor of computer science. And let me just say one thing. This idea that one model will be an AGI is, in my view, a completely wrong idea. So the aspect of a multi-agent framework is where what could lead to superintelligence of what one is talking about. And I think what you talked about, AGI as well on a decentralized network, make a lot of sense. But it's not one model. It's not just LLM. Because one model cannot deal with conflict. So any thoughts around that?
Yeah. I mean, that's, of course, SingularityNET platform, which I founded in 2017, is a decentralized multi-agent framework. It's specifically designed to support multiple AI agents that cooperate together to yield intelligence. I mean, Fetch.ai was founded on a similar premise. The interesting thing that blockchain lends is the different agents in a multi-agent system could be owned and controlled by different parties, but can then be still cooperating in this sort of decentralized agent fabric. And actually, we're just in the middle of doing a token merger between SingularityNET, Fetch, and Ocean, all of which are decentralized agent-based system, basically with the motive of increasing interoperability between the agents on the different platforms. So yeah, I think that does agree with my point of view. And I mean, yeah, certainly current LLMs don't even do online learning, right? I mean, they're trained in a batch mode. So these are not even single agents, let alone multiple agents. They're really just question answering systems. So yeah, that's sort of the point Ed and I were discussing, is these regulations are being crafted to address these huge, like, batch-trained predictive models with the premise that you're regulating AGI somehow that way, which is stupid. But it's good that it's stupid because it means it's not actually stopping the development that has more promise of leading to AGI.
Right. My point is that the multi-agent framework is one path towards AGI.
Yes.
But that still needs to be shown. It's not shown yet.
no path toward AGI is shown until we have an AGI, right? I mean, yeah.
Thank you.
One last point I'll make before I guess I'll close out my comments since we've got the 000 on the clock, is that that aligns a lot with my thinking. Everybody on the stage, and I think everybody on the space, realizes that centralization is a problem. When we talk about these state institutions, when we talk about governments, when we talk about intelligence agencies, when we talk about big businesses, centralization is desirable. Because they want choke points, right? They want the sort of cash register, the payment platform that everybody gets funneled towards. They want structures they're familiar with. But the decentralization is what we want to aim for because that replicates democracy. And like you said, whether we're talking about actual agent inferences or reasoning or different capabilities, you train the model for this, it can't handle that. We can replicate ideas that we've discovered in the past, like establishing a quorum, right? You get voting and probabilities. Of course, people in the space know much more about this than I do. But I just want to remind people of that central point, that centralization is a vulnerability. And the legacy institutions that sort of order our world today depend on that to influence you. They want a door that they can kick in. They want an identified list of people that they can subpoena. They want specific processes and numbers and feeds and figures that they can legislate around.
Yeah, we've got to.
But if you move beyond borders, if you move beyond models,
we got to go as far as possible.
You can reach something that no one can stop.
Right? Yeah, you got to go as far as possible. So this is like with our project Hypercycle, which is a joint venture of SingularityNet and Toda. Like we're making a blockchain which gets rid of the ledger. It's even less centralized than ledger-based blockchain. So you need to go the exact opposite direction and make things as decentralized as possible, and that's more robust, right? So yeah, I mean, these centralized systems seem very powerful, but there's a single point of failure, right? And they know that, so they try to put a bunch of defense mechanisms against this brittleness and the single point of failure. But in the end, a massively distributed, decentralized system is just fundamentally more robust on the design level, right? And I mean, that's been a while to get blockchain technology to the point of high speed and low cost so that these fundamental advantages can be manifest, but it has gotten better year on year. So I mean, it seems like, as any good Hollywood movie, like just in the nick of time, blockchain will become fast enough and cheap enough, just in the nick of time for us to launch AGI on it and have it work, right? But if it weren't right down to the wire, it wouldn't be any fun.
Well, that's it for me, everyone. Thank you, Ben. And for everybody in the audience, remember, don't be afraid to defy the consensus. It might get you in trouble, but you'll be much closer to being right in the eyes of history. Thank you, and stay free.
Thanks, Ed.